Maybe you clicked out of curiosity, or maybe, without even realizing it, you were looking for a quiet place where words come slowly and silence is part of the conversation. I wrote this story with care, like stitching together memories, pain, and hope, hoping that somewhere along the way, you might see a bit of yourself. If you do, even for just a moment, stay a while. Listen as long as you want, and if you feel like it, leave a small sign. It doesn't have to be much. Sometimes a simple "I'm here" changes everything. If this story speaks to you, a like, share, or comment would mean the world. And if you want to hear more, consider subscribing. You're always welcome here. It was one of those quiet Saturday mornings where everything felt almost perfect. The California sun was pouring through the kitchen blinds, warm and soft. I had a tray of fresh cinnamon waffles cooling on the counter, and the faint smell of maple syrup lingered in the air. Upstairs, my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, was giggling like she didn't have a care in the world. I could hear her tiny feet padding across the carpet and her soft voice cooing to her favorite doll as she brushed its hair. I remember thinking, this is one of those rare, calm mornings I'll actually remember. Then, without warning, the front door swung open. "Where's my little gremlin?" a loud, overly familiar voice called out. I froze for a second, recognizing the voice before I even turned around. My sister, Chelsea, waltzed into my house like she owned the place, sunglasses still on, hair perfectly styled for an Instagram story she was probably filming in the car. Chelsea has always been, well, Chelsea. The golden child, the family favorite, the one who could throw a tantrum at age 25 and still have my parents defending her like she was the second coming of Audrey Hepburn. Meanwhile, I was the boring one, the too serious, too sensitive, too uptight sister, the one who double-checked the locks and had a meal plan on the fridge. Ellie came flying down the stairs, her brown curls bouncing with every step, eyes lighting up at the sight of her aunt. "Auntie Chels!" she squealed. Chelsea scooped her up dramatically, spinning her in a circle like she was on stage for an audience. "Oh my gosh, look at this mop of hair," she said, playfully tugging one of Ellie's curls. "Who let it get this wild?" I leaned against the doorway, trying to keep my voice casual. "Careful with her hair, Chels. She's a little sensitive about it." Chelsea smirked, rolling her eyes. "Oh, relax, big sis. She's a kid, not a supermodel. A little teasing never hurt anyone." I should have said more. I should have drawn the line right there. But years of family dynamics had trained me to avoid conflict, especially with Chelsea. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, and I was tired of being the dramatic one for defending myself, or God forbid, my daughter. As I watched them laugh together, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that always appeared whenever my sister walked in, like I was already losing before the fight had even started. And deep down, I knew something about this morning was about to go horribly wrong. Chelsea plopped down on the couch with Ellie still in her arms, twirling a lock of my daughter's curls between her fingers. "Wow, this mop is screaming for a makeover," she said with a laugh, flipping one of Ellie's ringlets like she was a stylist on a reality show. Ellie giggled, a little shy but clearly thrilled by the attention. She didn't know yet that with Chelsea, attention always came with strings attached. I stepped out from the hallway, arms crossed, trying to keep my voice even. "Chels, don't cut her hair. I'm serious. She's really attached to it." Chelsea tilted her head toward me, that familiar smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Oh, come on. I'm not a monster." "Relax, big sis," she said, waving her manicured hand like I'd just overreacted for fun. But something in my chest tightened. I'd seen that exact smirk when we were kids, right before she borrowed my clothes, or lied to get me in trouble, or broke something I loved and called it an accident. I opened my mouth to push back, but the sound of the front door swinging open again cut me off. "Hey, everyone!" My mom's voice floated in, cheerful and loud. My dad trailed behind her, already carrying a box of pastries from the local bakery. Chelsea's favorite, of course. The second my parents spotted Chelsea, their faces lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Look at you, honey," Mom gushed, walking straight past me as if I was part of the furniture. "That outfit is adorable. Have you lost weight?" Dad chuckled. "You always look like $1,000,000, Chels. LA must be treating you well." I stood there holding a plate of cinnamon waffles I'd made for them, but nobody looked my way. Nobody asked how I was. Nobody asked about Ellie's week, or her kindergarten art project, or the fact that she'd just learned to ride her bike without training wheels. Chelsea basked in the attention, tossing her hair like she was on stage. "Thanks. I've got a couple interviews lined up with this luxury fashion brand." "No big deal," she said casually, which of course meant very big deal. Mom gasped and clapped her hands. "Oh, sweetheart, I just knew you'd end up doing something glamorous." I set the plate down and forced a smile, my stomach twisting tighter with every word. This was our family dynamic in a nutshell. Chelsea dazzling, my parents fawning, and me quietly holding the pieces together. Ellie looked up at her aunt with wide eyes. "Auntie Chels, can we do nails today?" "Absolutely, baby girl," Chelsea said, kissing the top of her head. Then she looked at me over Ellie's shoulder with a sly grin. "Maybe even a little hair magic too." My pulse jumped. "Chelsea, I mean it. Don't cut her hair." She raised her hands in mock surrender, still smiling. "Relax, big sis. I promise. We're just having some fun." But as I watched her carry Ellie upstairs, my gut twisted with unease. I'd lived my entire life ignoring that feeling, telling myself not to make waves, and in that moment, I let it happen again, a choice I'd regret before the day was over. About an hour later, I heard the soft creak of the stairs. I glanced up, expecting to see Ellie bouncing down in painted nails and maybe some glitter in her hair. Instead, my heart dropped. Ellie stood on the third step, face flushed, eyes brimming with tears. She clutched the banister like she didn't want to come any closer. "Mommy," she whispered, her little voice shaking. And then I saw it. Her beautiful brown curls were gone, hacked off unevenly, brutally. The right side of her head was almost shaved, a jagged mess of short tufts sticking out in random directions. The left side hung in uneven chunks, like someone had started cutting and got bored halfway through. I froze for a second, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Then Chelsea came sauntering in behind her, spinning a pair of silver scissors between her fingers like a trophy. "Chill," she said with a laugh, grinning like this was some TikTok prank. "It's just hair. She wanted bangs, so I gave her my version." Ellie's chin trembled. She looked like a balloon someone had just let all the air out of. I dropped to my knees and held out my arms. "Oh, baby, come here." The moment she reached me, she collapsed into my hug, her tiny shoulders shaking with sobs. Her hair smelled like kid shampoo and fear, and I could feel my own eyes stinging as I glared over her head at Chelsea. "You butchered her hair," I said, my voice low and shaking. From the couch, my mom snorted. "Oh, please, it'll grow back." Dad didn't even look up from the pastry box. "Honestly," he said, "she looks better like this. Less messy." Chelsea leaned against the railing with a smug little shrug. "See? Dad gets it. I did her a favor." She was starting to look like a little woodland creature. Ellie burst into louder tears, burying her face in my neck. My arms tightened around her, my pulse pounding in my ears. I looked at my family, my sister, my parents, laughing and smiling while my daughter was humiliated and sobbing. The shame, the fury, the helplessness, it hit me all at once like a punch to the chest. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the scissors. But something inside me hardened. They had finally crossed a line I didn't even know I had. The next morning, the house felt like a different place. The California sun was still streaming through the blinds, but the warmth was gone. The smell of cinnamon waffles had been replaced by the faint scent of tear-soaked pillows and kid shampoo. Ellie sat curled up on the couch, knees to her chest, refusing to lift her head. Her freshly butchered hair stuck out in jagged tufts, and every time she accidentally caught a glimpse of her reflection in the black TV screen, she flinched. "Sweetheart," I said gently, kneeling beside her. "We can try a cute headband today, or maybe a fun hat." She shook her head hard. "I don't want to go to school," she whispered. They'll laugh at me." I wrapped my arms around her tiny frame. "No one is going to hurt you," I said softly. "And you're still the most beautiful girl in the world." She didn't answer, just pressed her face against my chest, her small fingers twisting my shirt. I texted her teacher and told work I was staying home. For the rest of the day, I let the world outside disappear. We painted, baked cookies, and watched Tangled for the millionth time. Every laugh she gave me felt like a fragile piece of glass I had to protect. But under that calm surface, a storm was building inside me. Every time I saw one of those hacked-off strands of hair fall to the floor, my hands tightened. I kept seeing my mom rolling her eyes and my dad saying Ellie looked better. By the time Ellie finally fell asleep in my bed, snuggled up with her doll, my chest felt like it was on fire. And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I didn't beg for their understanding. I opened my laptop. Buried in an old folder was a document I hadn't touched in almost 6 years, a business partnership contract. Back when I still had some savings, I'd invested quietly in my college friend Marcia's hair salon. She'd always dreamed of expanding, and I helped her open a second location. I didn't ask for public credit or a name on the sign. I only wanted a small ownership stake, and one particular clause. In matters of reputation or crisis, I would retain final decision-making rights. At the time, it was just a safety net, a lawyer's idea of good foresight. Now, it felt like a weapon waiting for me to pick it up. I scrolled through Marcia's Instagram feed. The salon's name was all over Chelsea's story the day before. She had used their branded cape and posted a selfie with Ellie before the makeover. And I knew exactly what that meant. I sat back in the dark bedroom, my laptop screen glowing on my face, and I whispered to myself, "All right, game on." By Monday morning, I was done crying on the inside. Ellie was still home with me, wrapped in her soft pink blanket, quietly coloring at the kitchen table. I kissed her forehead and told her I had to run an errand, leaving her with my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, who adored her like a grandchild. I drove across town to Marcia's salon, the same place Chelsea used in her Instagram story. The bell above the door chimed when I walked in, and Marcia looked up from the front desk, her warm smile fading the moment she saw my face. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, already sensing something was off. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot. Chelsea's grinning face, Ellie's hacked hair barely visible under a too big salon cape, and the caption, "Number sign, snip snip, number sign, chaos number sign, new look." Marcia's eyes went wide. "Wait, she did that to your daughter? In my salon's name?" I nodded. "And she posted it to her 20,000 followers like it was a joke." Marcia slammed her palm on the counter. "She used our tools? Our brand? Are you kidding me?" That makes it look like we endorse child humiliation. I scrolled and showed her the next photo Chelsea had posted. The scissors she'd brought home from the salon, with my daughter's hair on the floor in the background. Marcia went silent for a long moment, then said through gritted teeth, "She's done. Consider her fired, effective immediately." I exhaled slowly, a small wave of satisfaction washing over me. But I wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," I said. "I don't just want her gone. I want to make this right." Marcia crossed her arms, listening. "What if we turned this into something bigger?" I said, leaning on the counter. "Something good. A program for kids who've been bullied or traumatized because of their hair. Free makeovers, fun events, a day where they feel like the most important person in the room." Marcia's frown slowly shifted into a thoughtful look. "Like a community event?" "Exactly," I said. "We can call it Curls and Courage, make it positive, uplifting. We get local stylists to volunteer. Social media will eat this up, and it turns a bad story into something inspiring." Marcia tapped her nails against the counter, then smiled. "I love it. And we can do it fast. You know I have contacts at the local paper." I pulled up the screenshots of Chelsea's posts again and tucked them into a new folder on my phone. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about turning her cruelty into a platform for kindness and making sure the world saw the difference between us. As I drove home, the first pieces of my plan were already falling into place. Chelsea had taken a pair of scissors to my daughter's pride. I was about to take a scalpel to her entire image. 2 weeks later, the plan came to life. The front windows of Marcia and Company's salon were covered in pastel balloons and banners that read, "Curls and Courage, a day for brave kids." Inside, the salon buzzed with energy. Volunteer stylists were setting up stations with mirrors, glitter hairspray, and trays of colorful hair accessories. Local photographers were adjusting their cameras, and a small news crew was already waiting for the first big shot. When Ellie stepped out of the car, clutching my hand, she hesitated. Her pink sequin dress sparkled in the sunlight, but she still kept her head slightly bowed, like she was afraid someone might laugh. I crouched down to her level. "Hey," I whispered, brushing a strand of uneven hair behind her ear. "Today is your day. Everyone here is just excited to see your smile." She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath, and then we walked in together. Marcia immediately greeted her with a warm hug. "Miss Ellie, are you ready for a little magic?" Ellie's shy nod was all it took. The best stylist in the city, a woman named Tasha who'd done hair for local TV anchors, knelt down and showed Ellie the pink combs and ribbons she'd picked out just for her. As the scissors snipped and the blow-dryer hummed, I watched my daughter transform in the mirror. Not just her hair, but her spirit. Soft curls framed her face again, this time with a playful side braid. Tasha dusted her shoulders with a hint of shimmer. Then, for the first time in weeks, Ellie looked at her reflection and smiled. Not a nervous smile, a real, radiant one. The photographer caught it instantly. Click. By the end of the day, Ellie was spinning in her dress under the string lights outside the salon, laughing as glitter confetti rained down. The next morning, a local parenting blog shared her photo with the headline, "Little girl smiles again after hair bullying. Community rallies behind her." By the end of the week, it had gone viral. TikTok videos of Ellie's transformation were hitting 1 million views. Instagram comments flooded in. "This broke my heart and healed it in one scroll. Whoever did that to her should be ashamed." And then came the domino effect. Chelsea's own followers started asking questions. "Wait, isn't that your niece? Weren't you the one with the number snip snip post?" Within days, she went radio silent on her accounts. Brands she'd been bragging about working with? Gone. Influencer friends who always hyped her up? They quietly unfollowed her. Meanwhile, Ellie was getting handwritten cards from strangers, teachers, and even a few little girls who sent photos of themselves with matching braids. She taped them all to her bedroom wall, and I watched a light return to her that I thought might have been lost. For the first time, I felt like justice wasn't just possible. It was happening in real time, right in front of me. After the campaign's success, I knew I had to share our story, but carefully. I wrote a heartfelt post on a popular parenting blog, describing what happened to Ellie without naming names. The post wasn't about drama or revenge. It was about the pain of watching your child hurt, the shame of family betrayal, and the hope that no other parent would have to go through it. Within hours, the story caught fire. Comments poured in. "This hits too close to home. Thank you for speaking up for the kids who can't. Families can be the hardest people to protect us from." But as the community rallied behind us, my parents' phone started blowing up with messages, not supportive ones. Friends, neighbors, even some family acquaintances were texting, calling, and sending emails blaming me. They said I'd turned them into monsters, that I was embarrassing the family, that I was playing the victim for attention. For years, I had absorbed their subtle digs and outright dismissals, but this time was different. With the support of my lawyer, I sent them an official no-contact order. The paperwork made it clear. They were to have no communication with me or Ellie. No calls, no visits, no messages. When my mom called me afterward, I let the phone ring in my hand. "Finally," she said coldly, "maybe if you weren't always so dramatic, none of this would have happened." For the first time ever, I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just hung up, because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about protecting my daughter. That night, as Ellie slept peacefully beside me, I felt a strange kind of power. A power that came from finally standing up, speaking out, and refusing to stay silent. A few days after the no-contact order, my phone buzzed with a message from Chelsea. "Hey, I know things got out of hand. Can we talk? I want to apologize to Ellie." For a moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something better, a chance for healing. But that hope evaporated the very next day. Chelsea appeared on a popular podcast, laughing and brushing off the whole thing. "People are way too sensitive about hair these days," she joked. "I mean, I just snipped a little ponytail, and suddenly I'm canceled like I committed some felony." The casual cruelty in her voice made my skin crawl. That's when I knew she wasn't sorry. She just wanted to save face. I took a deep breath and gathered every piece of evidence I had. Screenshots of her posts, the salon's branded cape, videos, and even the contract clause I'd found years ago. My father was a silent investor in a local luxury spa chain, a company that prided itself on inclusivity, respect, and positive community impact. I sent everything to the spa's legal team, explaining that his continued involvement was now a direct threat to their brand values. Within a week, the news broke. My father had been removed from the board of directors. All his years of careful reputation building, behind-the-scenes deals, and influence, wiped away by a single clause in a contract he hadn't even known existed. The dominoes began to fall. His contacts distanced themselves, his social standing crumbled, and for the first time, the man who had always looked so untouchable felt the sting of consequence. Riding the momentum from curls and courage, I knew we could do more. So, with Marcia and a small team of dedicated volunteers, we launched the Ribbon Project, a nonprofit that offered emotional counseling, legal support, and beauty makeovers for kids who'd been bullied, publicly shamed, or abused. Our goal was clear: to create a safe space where children could heal, regain confidence, and know they weren't alone. The highlight was our first gala event, a black tie affair held in a downtown Los Angeles event hall, complete with photographers, reporters, and local celebrities. Ellie walked down the red carpet in a shimmering silver dress, her curls bouncing with every step. When reporters asked how she felt, she looked directly into the camera and said, "When people try to cut you down, grow back louder." The line instantly caught fire. It became a rallying cry shared across social media, parenting forums, and even local schools. The press coverage was overwhelming. Major outlets featured our story, from heartfelt interviews to moving photo spreads. Community leaders and politicians reached out with support. Meanwhile, my family, Chelsea, Mom, and Dad, were nowhere to be seen. They had been quietly erased from our lives, left to face the cold reality of their choices in isolation. Messages of regret trickled in from distant relatives and acquaintances, but it was too late for apologies. Ellie's light was shining brighter than ever, and for the first time, I felt truly free. Weeks after the gala, a plain envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a single folded letter, the handwriting unmistakably my mother's. "You made us look like villains, all to protect your daughter?" The note was accompanied by an old, worn photograph. Me, Chelsea, and Ellie, taken years ago when I still believed our family could be normal. I stared at it for a long time. The memories threatened to pull me back into a past I'd fought so hard to leave behind. Then, without hesitation, I fed the photo and letter into the shredder. They weren't protecting anyone. They were destroying everything. Later that evening, as I tucked Ellie into bed, she handed me a drawing she'd made. A stick figure wearing a cape, her wild curls flowing behind her like a superhero's. Underneath, in her shaky 6-year-old handwriting, "Mommy, you're my curly-haired superhero." I kissed her forehead, feeling a warmth that no storm could touch. The next day, standing before a crowd of over 300 supporters at the Ribbon Project's annual fundraiser, I shared our story openly. No hiding, no sugarcoating. "They thought cutting me down would make me small," I said, voice steady. "But they pruned the wrong tree. And now, I'm blooming, stronger than ever. There's no room left here for weeds." The applause was thunderous, filled with hope and solidarity. That night, as I held Ellie's hand, I knew we had turned a cruel act into a movement, one that would help countless others grow louder, prouder, and free.